Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Volunteer Technologist podcast. Here we take a look at the different ways that people who are technically inclined volunteer outside of their primary job. Today, I'm joined by RJ Hill, and he's going to talk to us about the volunteer work he does with an organization called Engineered Reform. Hi, RJ. How's it going?
Hey, Gene. It's going really well, actually.
I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me about this, and all I know about Engineered Reform so far is that it has something to do with helping people who are in or were recently in prison better themselves and find jobs in or related to technology. So I'd love to hear what you have to say about that, but also I'd like to hear a little bit about who you are so our audience has an idea of who it is that's talking to me.
That's fair. Yeah. So I'm RJ Hill. I've been around for a while. I met Gene probably what are we on, 15 years, something like that.
Yeah, I think so.
I met Gene like 15, 20 years ago while we were both working in IT, and we both kind of followed the same trajectory, just in different directions, up through the kind of technology stack. And now I work at a company called Chipper Cash, as a cloud engineer on a very small team, which I love. I love small teams. Just doing cloud engineering stuff. So that's me.
Very cool.
Yeah. And so Engineered Reform, you're absolutely right, Gene. Engineered Reform, basically our goal is to reduce the rate of recidivism, right? And we can do that by, when folks are coming out of prison, helping them kind of build the foundations to become a technologist, right? And that doesn't necessarily take out entrepreneurship or anything. It's kind of all encompassing, right? So they could go work for a company, or they could start their own company.
That sounds
Completely
pretty cool.
up to them. And so once they get that stable foundation of technology, they can kind of go whichever way they want. And the whole entire point of that piece of it is they've got that stable foundation for tech. Now they can create a stable foundation for the rest of their life as well, right? So it's going to lead to a solid income, hopefully stable housing, stable transportation, things like that, stable mental and physical health and well-being, things like that. So that's what our aim is. It doesn't necessarily have to be someone who is or was in prison. It could be people in recovery. It could be people who are just neurodiverse and falling on some hard times, because a lot of the neurodiversity folks have a difficult time with police officers. So when they get into a situation where maybe they're homeless or something like that, and they have those interactions, it can escalate very quickly. So again, just kind of pulling them out of that situation, getting them the stable foundation that they need, and getting them stable housing, stable transportation, and all that.
So in this particular context,
Mm-hmm.
when you're referring to neurodiverse, I'm guessing you're talking more on the mental illness side of things, as opposed to the part of neurodiversity that is things like ADHD and that kind of stuff. Or are you talking
All of it?
Okay.
Yeah, because unfortunately, this is the kind of the bad news about it. Unfortunately, a lot of those pieces, like let's just use autism, right, as a piece. A lot of folks who are autistic also have other mental challenges. Let's
Very
just say,
true.
right?
Very true.
So they don't. Unfortunately, most of the time, when you have some sort of mental illness or some sort of mental disability, it's rarely unaccompanied by something else. It's rarely flying solo in your noggin. So yeah, we try to cover all of it, and actually we've got this really awesome human. His name's Henry. We just started working with him about a week and a half ago, and we've already got him stable housing. We're looking at getting him stable transportation. We've got him a laptop that's coming to him, and I've got him a subscription to Pluralsight for the year, and we'll just we're just working on getting him stable, getting
That's
him
super cool.
into tech.
I know with a tremendous number of the employment opportunities that are out there, being qualified for the job is one thing, but
Mhm.
without transportation, so many of them are just off the table. Like they won't hire you if you don't have stable transportation. Is that seem to be hold true with the kind of jobs y'all are helping people work for, or does the technological aspects of it, the tendency for remote work in the IT field, does that help alleviate some of the needs for the transportation side?
Yeah, you nailed it. It definitely helps with some of it. There are some companies out there um, who are still in our post COVID sort of mindset where they're thinking we still need people coming into the office. We need FaceTime. We can't run a good company without having the face to face sort of time. And I get that as a extroverted introvert, I definitely understand that. I love seeing people's faces. I love seeing your face right now. So I understand from that point of view why that's necessary in some cases. But with a lot of folks who have cognitive disabilities, that's not really a good thing. So the remote work that you had mentioned before really helps in that regard. But going back to your original point, yes, the transportation is key in a number of cases. So if they don't have stable transportation, like I'm trying to think of a company who's not doing remote work. Um, I don't know. I can't think of one off the top of my head right now, but yeah, any of the ones that aren't doing it, they want people to come in. Like
Yeah.
even their interviews are in person
Oh,
still,
yeah.
right? So
I've seen companies where you've got to come in for at least part of the interview, even if the majority of the job is remote. They want to
yep,
have that FaceTime during the interview process, which I can understand because there's a lot you can learn about a person and their potential fit or not fit with a team by having that in-person interaction
yep,
that you just can't get through a video camera.
yeah.
And it's just the unfortunate reality of it.
And then stable housing, it's something that a lot of people don't think about. But if you don't have an address, or a stable address, a PO box, anything like that, and even sometimes PO boxes won't work. If you don't have some sort of fixed address, you don't have bills, you can't prove certain things, and any hard snail mail that comes to you, any actual mail that comes to you might come to the wrong place. Like if you go in for a job interview and they're like, hey, where do we mail the offer packet? You
Yeah.
don't have a place, right? And
When you got to
so
have some place to put on things like
yep,
the employment forms for the tax records. Like they,
exactly.
even if you end up getting a electronic W-2, you've got to have an address to put on there so that they know. I mean, if nothing else, they have to know what, set of tax laws apply to you because that's based on where you live.
Exactly. So that's another sort of barrier to entry there for almost any, well, not even almost for any job.
Yeah. So, can you talk a little more about how that work overlaps with or specifically helps people that either in or were in prison or in jail or, helps with the recidivism or the
Yeah.
lack. Let me try that again. Helps with keeping people from having a high recidivism rate.
Specifically among folks who are neurodiverse, right? The rate of recidivism is ridiculously high because they don't have the same um, ability in some cases to recognize the facial cues, to understand all the stuff that goes into human interaction. So they perceive things wrongly, and then things escalate from there, right? And that doesn't help with the recidivism. So there's the neurodiverse community, and then there's the, I don't even know, neurotypical. Yeah, there you go. That's the word
Yeah,
for it.
neurotypical is generally the term I've heard.
Yeah, so you've got the neurodiverse and the neurotypical, right? So for the neurotypical side of things, um, the ease of going back to what you know when you leave prison is it's like ridiculously high. It's so easy. Like if I was, let's just say, I'm just using this as an example. If I'm selling heroin, I get arrested for that. I go to jail. I spend some time in jail, and I get back out. The thing that I know is selling heroin. So I'm going to go out and I'm going to do it again because I know that there's money in this. And
And generally,
so,
if I understand correctly, generally when you come out of incarceration, you don't come out with like a pocket full of cash. So,
no,
if
you
you,
actually come out with bills.
yeah, unless you want to live on the street, you've got to get some money. You got to get quick. And so the thing is, unfortunately, the quickest way to, even if you don't want to keep doing that, you've got to do something to get back on your feet, unless you've got
Exactly.
somebody out there to give you a hand. And a lot of
And
people don't want to ask for help, especially from their family or the friends that they might have had when they went in.
exactly. A lot of people don't want to ask for help. And on the other side of it, a lot of people have a sort of aversion to helping formerly
Yeah,
incarcerated humans because they don't know, like that's another thing. Was it a violent crime? Was it a nonviolent crime? Like, why were you in there? What were you doing? Things like that. And they
it's
don't
just
want to
a
be,
stigma that comes with it.
yeah, it's a huge stigma. And they also don't want to be an accessory to
Yeah.
another crime, right? So, understandable. Um, but it stinks, right? It totally stinks. So the idea here to reduce the rate of recidivism, right, is to get into the prisons, to get into the jails, and to start training folks who are there already. So when they get out, if they've got 6 months, a year left on their time, they're going through the program. They're learning the skills. So when they get out, they've got something to go to. They've got a foundation to stand upon, right? And that's number one. Number two, we're also taking in laptops and things like that to format and then redistribute to these folks. So it's not like they're coming out and then just walking down the side of the road. They're coming out. We're giving them the equipment. We're trying to get them vehicles, right? We're trying to get them housing. So all of that is part and parcel to pulling somebody back into society, like almost almost forcibly yanking them back into society and saying, "Hey, here's your shot. Here's your foundation. Stand on this and make something good." And so our hope is that this changes things. We don't have any numbers yet, but we're working on it.
Can you talk a little bit about what it looks like to, as you said, go into the prisons and start working with them? Like, what is what does that look like? Are y'all just giving them some curriculum and leaving it with them? Or are y'all going in and actually spending time in there with them? Are you using equipment that is already there? Or are y'all bringing equipment in to do lessons? Like, what does that actually look like for those of us who have never been in that scenario? Like, I don't even know what the inside of a jail or prison looks like. Thank
That's a
goodness.
good thing.
I'm really happy that I have no reason to know about that. And I would imagine many people listening don't really have a mental picture of what it means to, as you said, go in and start working with them before they're released.
Sure. Just to take even like a slightly further step back, the first thing we do is we call up the prison and we talk to the warden, right? We call up the jail, we call up the prison, we say, "Hey, are y'all kind of equipped for something like this? Would you even be interested in something like this?" Right? And then once we get there, we assess the situation, right? So the typical uh, techie answer is it depends,
Oh, of
right?
course. Yeah, I mean that's
So
the nature of
some
all technology is it depends.
Yeah, some prisons are actually fairly well equipped to handle this kind of thing, and some just have nothing. Right? Some have no computers, no nothing, zero. So there's a couple of ways that we can do this. We do so we've I don't want to say partnered with Pluralsight, but basically that's our course platform that we're using. My buddy Drew Furman over there and I had talked about this a little bit back and forth, and he was like, "Oh, we also have this like really cool Pluralsight one where you can like do all this fun stuff and build courses and all that stuff." So anyway, we'll get into that in a second, but that's what kind of spurred that for us. So we're not really a partner of Pluralsight. It'd be cool if we were, but that's the platform that we use. Anyway, going forward. So when when we actually get hands on keys, right? We've got, let's just say, 10 prisoners sitting down and they've got computers in front of them. Number one, if the prison has the computers, great. All they have to be able to do is access the internet and play videos for the most part. There is a little bit of, fun time stuff that we get going on where you're, coding in like maybe HTML or JavaScript or something like that. But most computers, thankfully, at this point in time, most computers can handle that level of coding.
That makes sense.
The other side of the story is there's no computers there. There's nothing there. So we have to talk with the warden. We have to talk with the officers around in and around the prison and figure out a way to either get them funds to build that out or to bring some stuff in, which is really, really difficult so far. We've had a lot of issues trying to get stuff into prisons because it's this outside object that's coming in and they have
Yeah,
to
you're
do.
bringing outside stuff into a secure environment. I can see where that would be fraught with all kinds of challenges
Yeah,
for
because
all
they're
the
like,
reasons that we see in dramas on TV.
exactly. They're like, how do we know that they're not going to do X, Y, and Z with this?
Yeah.
Right. So it's really, really difficult. So we're still trying to set up a pipeline for that and figure out all the things around that. I'm sure there's something out there. So if anyone listening to this has like the magical answer, if there's software or something, please reach out. But yeah, so let's go back to the first situation, right? They've got computers in front of them. They log into Pluralsight. We've built some courses, or not some courses, some paths on Pluralsight with the Pluralsight courses to say, look, if you are thinking about software, take a couple of these and see if you really want to get into the software. If you're thinking about cloud, take a couple of these and see if you're really into the cloud stuff. If you're thinking about management, engineering managers, take a couple of these in the software, these in the cloud to see if you can kind of get your head around it. And then some of these in the management aspect of things and see if you're into that, right? Because it does take a little bit of, you have to have the verbiage, right? You have to
Yeah.
be able to speak to the engineers to wrangle the cats, so to speak, right?
Yeah, you have to be able to understand the words that are being spoken to you to be able to then make decisions that
Mm-hmm.
are in the best interest of your team as a whole
Write the
and of the company.
stories, use Jira
Mm-hmm.
or whatever other. I don't even know
Let's
what the
be
other ones
honest.
are.
If you're just taking a stab in the dark at how to get into the field, you need to understand at least the basics of how to use Jira.
Yeah.
You may not end up in Jira, but if you can understand it, you've got one step farther along, and you've got about an 80+% chance that that's what you're going to be using.
Yeah, for better or for worse, right?
Right. I mean, yeah, that's the kind of thing with things that have kind of become ingrained in corporate culture is there are certain tools that you don't have to like them, but you do have to know your way around them.
Like Jenkins.
Well, yeah, Jenkins is a great example. I mean, it's it's a Swiss
Is
Army
in
knife
there.
that can do anything, and because it can do anything, it has been shoehorned into everything.
Everything.
There's also that whole misnomer of, oh, it's free. Well, yeah, it's free like a puppy.
Yeah. Is it
Not to knock
really
Jenkins.
free
I
though?
do love Jenkins when it's used appropriately, but also, dear Lord, is it not the right tool for every job?
Hey man, you gotta. There's always something that you gotta have that just gets shoehorned into every job,
Yeah,
and that's okay.
yeah,
But yeah, so once we get them kind of kicked off in the coursework, we let them figure out their own path, right? Because there are multiple paths within technology. You don't just have to do software. You don't just have to do cloud. You can be a manager. You can do generic IT like we used to do, right? Like, hey, I love building computers. I know how the inner workings of computers work. I know how to format a hard drive. I know how to install an OS. I want to just do support work. I want to build computers, at University of West Georgia.
yeah,
That's fine.
absolutely.
That's fine. That's a perfectly fine path in tech. Like all these paths are different and they're all just as good as one another. So
And
that's
I
the
mean, let's
idea.
be
So,
honest, a low end tech job frequently pays better than a high end, retail job, or
absolutely.
definitely better than a fast food job. So, I
Hmm.
mean, even the most basic of tech jobs is still a pretty decent career, especially when you're coming out of nothing.
Yeah. I mean, I would say you could probably find a college in the smallest town in America, and you're still probably making $15 to $20 an hour as an IT person.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's not, it's frequently not the California, two, three, $400,000 a year stuff that has made some of the stereotypes, but that doesn't mean it's not still really good money. And if your place you live isn't a super high cost of living area, you know, low end tech job paying reasonable wages for the area you live in, still pretty decent money. May not be
yeah,
the best money. Not
well,
trying to gloss over the
40K.
fact that it could be pretty crummy in the grand scheme of things, but still bearing a lot of other options and a
Yeah,
heck of a lot more fun and a lot
40K
more
in small
growth
town
opportunity.
America. Sorry, go ahead.
I always want to say it's a lot more growth opportunity there than with some of the alternatives too.
That's a really good point. Yeah, the growth opportunity is phenomenal because just look at us,
Oh yeah,
right? Look at us. There was so much potential coming out of IT to go into all the different things that we went into, right? Because we're you and I are pretty much not that we went so far apart, but you went down the path of
yeah.
sort
I'm
of
more
the
on the
system
operations
admin
side.
and the ops, yeah. And I went down the software engineering, cloud engineering path.
Mm-hmm.
But funny enough, we kind of almost landed in similar roles, right? Because I'm
Yeah,
building infrastructure and stuff, and you're handling similar sort of in a
yeah.
in a roundabout kind of way, right?
We're not that far apart in the grand scheme of things. I mean, I work for a software company now and support engineers writing software and do some operation stuff, a little bit of programming, and where I've got my scales are tipped slightly to the opposite side as yours are, but we're both still in the same field, still doing overlapping work.
Yeah, it's just interesting how much stuff there is out there where you can kind of go in similar paths, but then kind of
Yeah.
converge on the other side.
Mm-hmm. So for the courses, you mentioned that you've got some programming courses and some cloud operations courses or cloud courses and some engineering manager courses.
Hmm.
Are there any other tracks that y'all kind of have, or are those the main ones you're focused on right now?
So right now, those are the ones that we're focused on, just because the fact that we have people who can support those.
Oh yeah,
So
totally.
sort of as like, so for me, right? If somebody were to come through and say, "Hey, I've got this question about JavaScript or Java or PHP or whatever language they're working on," I can probably help them like in most cases, unless they're doing like, well, Fortran and COBOL, I could probably help them with too a little bit. It would take me a minute, but so if they're coming through and they have questions, I can help them troubleshoot. And there's also, thankfully, on the Pluralsight side, there are some experts as well. We haven't had the chance to really vet them, so I don't know,
Yeah,
how that works. But yeah, so we're staying in the vein of things that we can support for the moment, and people, and those veins that we have support for from external, right? So I have a couple people who are helping out, um, different buddies who will come in and, oh yeah, I'll donate 10 hours a month to help him. So we've got that going on too. So if we had folks who were like, hey, I'm in the ops area, or hey, I'm a sysadmin, or any of those things, where they could be like, oh yeah, I'll throw in an hour a week to help folks troubleshoot stuff, that would be super cool, and we can probably expand from there. Yeah.
that's cool. As a interesting aside, I know you were kind of making jokes about Fortran and COBOL, but as it turns out, if you can get somebody to learn COBOL, it's an incredibly lucrative
Oh yeah.
language because COBOL is still extensively used, especially in the banking industry.
Yeah. Banking and insurance.
Yeah,
Big money.
yeah,
Big money.
it was fascinating when I learned not long ago just how prevalent COBOL still is. And of course, flipping back to our university background, the student information system that most universities use has a non-trivial amount of COBOL still underpinning it. Banner,
Right.
unless something's changed that I'm not aware of, I believe Banner still has a non-trivial amount of COBOL under the hood.
Oh, banner. Banner.
So kind of stepping forward, you said you also work with people that are out. Is it kind of the same program, or do y'all have a facility that y'all worked out of, or how does that work?
Unfortunately, we don't have a facility, and I think for better or for worse, it's probably going to remain that way, just because it would be hard to
There's a
have
lot of
everyone congregate.
practicalities, or
Yeah,
there's a lot of logistics that come with having a facility.
it's easier for us right now to be like, hey, Joe's over here and Jen's over there, right? Let's just find them places that they can be over
Hmm.
there versus, hey, everyone meet up in Carrollton, or hey, everyone meet up in Atlanta, or hey, everyone meet up in Athens, right? Because you can, like, I mean, even just this very, I guess we're not a small state of Georgia, but even in just Georgia alone, right? Atlanta itself is
It's massive.
pretty massive. Yeah. What's the saying? It's like it takes an hour to get from anywhere in Atlanta to Atlanta, or
Yeah,
something like that. Yeah. So
yeah.
it's a huge time sink. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to optimize this small amount of time that we have on Earth anyway. So why force everyone to drive to one central location? Just get them set up where they can be set up, where they're
Yeah,
comfortable
totally.
being set up. And again, that's the other thing. Going back to the neurodiversity thing, some folks aren't comfortable meeting up in person, right? Some folks aren't comfortable going to a centralized location. They're comfortable in their, you can see my office back here that the listeners can't really see. I don't know if you're gonna put the video
Nah,
out,
no
but
video, just audio.
so my background is this is comfort. It's all my machinery. I've got a 3D printer behind me and all kind of stuff. I got jackets over the back of my chair. I've got all kind of goofy stuff all over, and I'm comfortable in this zone. So like, I don't want to take that away from the folks that we're trying to help.
Yeah,
I want to
I would
let them be
imagine that
comfortable.
I would imagine in a lot of cases they've got enough mental stress and stuff going on with having whatever challenges there's coming from, and with learning something new, that being in an uncomfortable location would just be yet another barrier to moving forward.
Yep. And so yeah, you're absolutely right. It's hard enough to get out, and there's a lot of other things too, right? So if they were to come to this centralized location, right, and they miss a parole hearing,
Yeah.
or a check-in with their parole officer, or any of those things, right? And sometimes they can't leave the area that they're at.
Oh yeah.
They might be under house arrest. There might be so many other things. So we're trying to make it, again, as open as possible, as flexible as possible. So
Along those same
probably
lines, have y'all had any worked with like halfway houses or parole officers or parole boards or anything like that?
so not yet. We're we have plans to go down that path. It's just getting set up in
Oh yeah,
the
totally.
yeah,
I was
in the
purely
prison area.
curious.
But yeah, no, yeah. We definitely do. That's why we got on the website. We're not just trying to focus on just individuals with criminal backgrounds. It's folks in recovery too. Like, we want to help those people out because, again, regardless of the rate of recidivism, right? I have tons of friends, like a phenomenal amount of friends back home in New York, who are constantly in and out of recovery. I understand on a very basic level what that's like. Like, it's just kind of ingrained in me.
So, for those listening along who aren't quite as familiar, will you elaborate on what you mean by recovery?
Sure, yeah. So again, it depends, but there's a lot
Yeah,
of different types of recovery. The recovery I'm specifically talking about is folks who've been uh, heavily using heroin, addicted to heroin, and are trying to recover. They're going to methadone clinics and things like that. So
yeah.
they're in active recovery for their addictions. Um, there's a ton of addictions too. It's not just heroin. There's
Oh, yeah,
so
of
many
course.
different addictions, but recovery looks different. Um, Not only for everyone in the same vein, but for everyone who's got different addictions, right? So there's so many different types of recovery that folks go through, but the recovery process is mostly the same as the post prison process, right? you're meeting up with someone to make sure that you are on a path and on the right path, and you're trying your best to stay away from the things that got you there in the first place.
Totally makes sense.
So it's again, it's tough. So when people are going through this recovery process, again, same as the person, they've got a lot of stuff that's going on in their lives.
Yeah.
Right? They're going to these meetings, whether it's AA or some sort of support meeting where they have sponsors and things like that, or they're just meeting with their sponsor and not a larger group meeting. Regardless, they have time commitments that they need to be there for, whether it's some sort of telepresence thing or whether they're there in person,
Yeah.
and all that kind of stuff. So it's a huge chunk of their lives that is taken up by this recovery process, and the whole entire point of that again is to make sure that they don't go back into it, right? And us coming through and trying to help them build that foundation is another step in the process of helping them not fall back to the same things, right?
Really cool. I want to kind of start wrapping things up here. Is there anything you would like to add on about either the organization or any other thoughts you wanted to add related to other things you're working on, or just anything else extra you'd like to share?
Anything else extra? Well, I always want to shout out Every Girl Shines, mostly because I also donate some time over there. I haven't been very good with donating my time over there, but whenever they need tech support, I try to get a little time in over there, and they have a fantastic mission. So check out everygirlshines.org. And if you're so inclined, check out engineeredreform.com. It's just engineered, ENGINEERED, reform, REFORM.com. And
I'll be sure and put links to both of those on the show notes so that people can find them and just click right through to them.
Yeah, if you feel like donating, we've got our 501c3. We will send out receipts. We need laptops and we need cash.
So in the range of laptops, what constitutes like the minimum of something that would be useful for you? Because I know we're recording this just after Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine many people got a new computer and have something, whether it's an old crappy Chromebook they're getting rid of or an old laptop they're getting rid of, or just maybe they weren't thinking about getting rid of it, but they don't really need it anymore. What would be something that you would say, hey, do you have something that's at least X that would be really useful for us and probably not so useful for what you're doing now?
That's a good question. So typically when when someone asks me that, I kind of I turn it back around to them. So I'd say, Gene, whatever you think would be a good laptop for you to develop on, I'll take it.
I was more thinking about this for someone who's not a developer, but might be listening and might have a spare machine. So I'm guessing something that shipped originally with at least Windows 7, Windows 8 on it.
Yeah, probably.
So something that's been made in the last 6 years.
I would say, yeah, anything. So let's see, 2022. Yeah, so anything 2016 or above is probably pretty good. We can make use of Chromebooks too, right? There's ways to finagle stuff with Chromebooks.
Okay. And then on the Mac side, just going off of kind of personal impression, I would guess anything 2015 and newer, like the 2015 models that I've used could easily do what you're talking about. So anything 2015 and newer would probably work.
Yeah, most likely. I'm trying to think of if there's any caveats there, but no, I think anything, 2015, 2016, anything up from there is pretty good. So yeah, if you got computers.
And does the Engineered Reform website have contact info so that if somebody did want to donate something?
All of the contact info.
Very cool. Well, hopefully somebody listening will be like, hey, that'd be a good use for that thing sitting in my closet or sitting off in the corner.
Yeah, that would be awesome. That'd be super helpful.
Cool. Well, RJ, thank you so much for your time. Greatly appreciate you sharing what you're doing. And I think it's some really great sounding work. Anything that will help people better themselves so that we can reduce the number of people in prison in a productive way, I think is an absolutely wonderful thing. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Have a good day.
You too.
You've been listening to the Volunteer Technologist podcast. This is a value for value podcast, which means I'll never charge you to listen. That said, it costs money to produce and host the show. If you got value from today's episode, then I hope you'll consider contributing to the show's ongoing production. The best way to do this is by sending a boost with a new podcast app such as Fountain, since a portion will be automatically shared with any guest who chooses to participate. Alternatively, you can contribute directly by visiting buymeacoffee.com/Gene Bean. You can find show notes, transcripts, and links to the things talked about in today's episode at volunteertechnologist.com. Thanks for listening.